Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the game review, Bournemouth 3, Everton 0 in the Premier League at the Vitality Stadium. Our second defeat to Bournemouth within the space of 3 days, 4 days, 7 goals conceded and only 1 goal scored against a side that hadn't picked up a Premier League point since mid-October before Saturday afternoon. I will reiterate that point, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to Bournemouth or to Bournemouth fans when I say this, but Everton have conceded 7 goals over 4 days and lost twice to a team that hadn't picked up a Premier League point, not a win, a Premier League point since mid-October. Listen, I feel like I said a lot on Saturday afternoon during the instant match reaction, and it was very emotion based and it was very instant. It was literally the moment the game had finished that I pressed live stream and we were on and we were talking, and it was very raw of how I felt about the football club and the way in which things are going on at the football club at at this current moment, from the board to the manager to the players to just how worried I actually am for the remainder of this season. Now, thankfully, we're now in a World Cup break, which is a little bit mad and something that I never thought I'd say during a Premier League season, that we're on a break for a World Cup, but we're here, and if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I'm absolutely made up that we're on a World Cup break. I'm absolutely buzzing for it, not particularly because I'm buzzing to watch the World Cup. In fact, if I'm honest, I've got no real interest in the World Cup for many reasons. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but one of the big reasons is because I'm just sick of football at the moment, and 6 weeks without having to really be bothered about football or watch football or pay any real attention to it sounds like an absolute dream to me. But what's really, really sad, and I was thinking about this today in work. Obviously I knew we were going to come and sit down and do the do the review to this game, and I was having a little think in work, and I thought, do you know what's really, really sad? I remember sitting here after the Arsenal game last season, final game of the season. Obviously, we'd been beaten quite heavily by Arsenal, and we'd had the elation and the joy and the relief of that Crystal Palace game just days before. And I remember sitting here after the Arsenal game saying, "Listen, it is what it is. Thank fuck the season's over. I can't wait for a break from Everton and to go again, next season, and hope that we can improve and hope that we'll never be in this situation again." And you fast forward 4 months, 5 months since that result against Arsenal, and I'm finding myself sitting here again, this time midway through a Premier League season, and having a very similar conversation with myself as to thank fuck that there's a break now, and thank fuck that period is over, because it is really, really, really worrying at the moment. And I know there'll be question marks around the manager, and I know there'll be a lot of questions on this stream about the manager and should Everton sack Frank Lampard, should Everton stay with Frank Lampard. The reality is Frank Lampard has travelled with the team today to Australia. You've seen any of the pictures on social media from various players. The team have travelled out today to Australia for the mid-season, pre-season, if you want to call it that. Obviously, we will take on Celtic and Melbourne City, or Sydney, one of them two teams. I can't remember, if I'm being honest with you. In a couple of training games to I suppose keep the fitness up, and I was going to say keep the momentum up, but there isn't any real momentum, is there? And just keep the players active during this break so that they're not sitting around, sitting on their hands waiting for football to return. Frank Lampard, again, I have no reason to believe he hasn't travelled with the team. I haven't seen actual pictures of him, but I'm sure we will over the course of the next couple of days or so. And that, for me, tells me that the club aren't going to sack the manager. Now, I don't know anything that nobody else doesn't know. I don't know any inside information, and with Farhad Moshiri and with the way in which Farhad Moshiri works, it wouldn't surprise me if Frank Lampard landed in Sydney and Farhad Moshiri greeted him at the gate and said, "Welcome to Australia, but you haven't got a job anymore." But my point is that given it's been a couple of days now since the game, given it's been, a few days since the fallout and the discussions, and given that the team have gone over to Australia now, it's very unlikely that Frank Lampard will be sacked, at least before this Australian tour. I don't really see the results in Australia having any real impact on his situation and position as Everton manager, and that would tell me that I'm assuming that he will be the manager come the 26th of December, Boxing Day, when football returns. Now, the problem we've got there is that we then play Wolves at Goodison, we play Manchester City, which, again, without trying to sound defeatist, we will probably lose, and then we play Brighton away, I think, early in January, or mid-January. So that's 3 games there, which take us into mid-January, which we may win, and we may all be sitting here going, oh my God, thankfully we stayed with Frank Lampard, or we may lose, and if we are to lose them 3, or 2 of the 3, then I would have a feeling that Frank Lampard would lose his job. And of course, you get the questions then of, well, why didn't we just sack him before Australia and get a new manager in, and this, that, and the other? But my gut feeling at the moment is that Frank Lampard is fairly secure within his job. And to be perfectly honest with you, I said it on the Instant Match Reaction, and I'll say it again. I'm not really one of these. I'm sort of in the middle with the Lampard situation, if I'm being honest with you. I'm not one of these fans that's going to sit here and say, I don't think there's any manager in the world that could do a better job, because if I'm being honest with you, I think this squad is underachieving this season. I think this team is underachieving. I think the midfield is much better than what we're seeing at the moment. I think there's much more quality in it than what we're seeing at the moment. And I think there's various pockets on the pitch that we're maybe not getting the most out of certain players that we could do. So I'm not going to sit here and blindly say there's not a manager in the world that could improve this Everton team, because I'm sure there's plenty of managers that Everton could employ that would get more out of this team. But it's not really a case of getting more out of this team. It's a case of getting enough out of this team. We could sit here and say, oh yeah, but, you could bring Sean Dyche in, Cam, or you could bring Tuchel in, you bring this manager, that manager, this manager. They'd get more out of this Everton team. That's fine. They might get more out of it, but will they get enough out of it? And the way I see it, whether we keep Frank Lampard and allow him to progress with this team and keep building and put our faith and trust in him, whether we sack Frank Lampard and go and get Sean Dyche, whether we go and get Thomas Tuchel, whether we go and get Mauricio Pochettino, or as I said in the Instant Match Reaction, and I wasn't even being facetious or trying to make a joke when I said this, whether we go out and get fucking Harry Potter or fucking Penn and Teller, there's certain elements of this Everton team that will not change regardless of who the manager is. Thomas Tuchel isn't going to come in and all of a sudden turn Neil Maupay into a consistent Premier League goal scorer, because he's never been a consistent Premier League goal scorer. We knew that when we signed him. He wasn't a consistent Premier League goal scorer. Sean Dyche isn't going to come in and all of a sudden Dwight McNeil's going to have a massive burst of pace. Dwight McNeil scored 1 goal in a season last season where Burnley were relegated and largely managed by Sean Dyche. Mauricio Pochettino isn't going to come in and all of a sudden Damari Gray is going to consistently light the world on fire. The reason he cost us £1.5 million is because he's got talent, and you see that every now and then, but it's very, very, very much every now and then. Few and far between. There's no consistency there. And this is me point with the manager discussion is, it's not that I don't think there's other managers out there that could get more out of this team. Is there a manager out there that can get enough out of this team as to what we need? And I honestly think the answer is no. I honestly think the answer is no. Now, yes, we could be a little bit more solid. Yes, we could be a little bit more compact. And yes, we could probably control games a little bit more. The midfield could do a little bit more. I really don't know why Frank Lampard decided to change the way in which we played after that Crystal Palace game when we were absolutely fantastic. We blew Palace out of the park. And then ever since then, he sort of just threw that up in the air and said, forget that. We're going to go back to a 4-3-3 and forget the way we played against Palace, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But even with that, it doesn't turn, as I said, Neil Maupay into a consistent goal scorer. It doesn't turn Damari Gray into somebody that's going to consistently get assists. The stream's lagging a little bit at the moment. I'm not quite sure why that is, but hopefully it catches up with itself. It's not going to turn Anthony Gordon into the world-class player that maybe some people think he is. It simply isn't going to happen, and that tells me that the only thing that Everton and us as Evertonians can sort of hang our hopes on as any real substance for change is the January transfer window. Now, I done a video last week, a news video. I don't know how many of you seen it, but we spoke about Dominic Calvert-Lewin's injuries and we spoke about a couple of things, but I specifically mentioned in that video, and I don't mean this in disrespect to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and I'm not by any sense of the imagination jumping on the whole get rid of him, he's absolutely useless bandwagon, because I don't think that's fair, because obviously his injuries are unavoidable for the large part, and he can't be blamed for that. But what I will say is, for me, Everton need to treat Dominic Calvert-Lewin a little bit how we've treated Yerry Mina now. And by that, what I mean is, he cannot be in the plan for the future. Dominic Calvert-Lewin cannot be the player we rely on. We can't have another situation where we're sitting here saying, well, if Dom's fit, we'll be all right. None of that. If Dominic Calvert-Lewin gets himself back to fitness, then that's absolutely fine. And if he gets himself to a consistent level where he's fit every week and he's playing and he's strong and he can get himself in the team, absolutely great. But what Everton need to be able to do is to be in a position where if that doesn't happen, which is highly likely, given that it's been 2 years since Dominic Calvert-Lewin started picking up injuries and he's still consistently out injured, Everton need to be in a position where if that doesn't happen, we can go, well, it doesn't matter. He's out injured for another 6 months, but it doesn't matter because we've got this lad who's going to come in and he's the number 9 anyway. Dom now is, I don't want to use the phrase surplus to requirements, but when you are unreliable, whether it's your fault or it's not your fault, similar to Yerry Mina, a change needs to be made at the club. And that's what we did this summer with Yerry Mina. We all know on his day, Yerry Mina, for me, is one of the best centre-halves in the world. On his day, he really, really is. Never mind just at Everton Football Club, one of the best centre-halves in the world. But the reality is his day doesn't often come because he's constantly being sucked down with injury after injury after injury. So what did Everton do in the summer? They said, well, do you know what? We're just going to go and bring 2 centre-halves in that are going to play every week. And when Yerry gets fit, we can address that then and we can decide whether or not we're going to start him or whether or not he's just going to be a backup. But until then, it doesn't matter because we're not relying on him. We relied a lot on Yerry Mina over the last 2 years and we've now overcome that. We need to do the same with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But the only way we're going to do that is the transfer window. And if you look at it, Everton have got 3 games until the transfer window. I'm not counting the games over in Australia because if I'm being honest with you, I think they're both on at about 5 o'clock in the morning and it isn't really going to matter what the results of those games are, is it? Let's be honest, nobody's really asked. We play Wolves on Boxing Day when football returns after the World Cup at Goodison. We play Man City on New Year's Eve and then we play Brighton on the 3rd of January. So technically we've got 2 games until the January transfer window. But given the Brighton game is so early on in January, let's say 3, because Southampton, which is the game after Brighton, is the 14th of January, which is mid-January. So let's say we've got 3 games before, realistically, we could expect any real signing to come into Everton, unless, and dare I suggest, Everton are a little bit proactive over the next 6 weeks, where a lot of people at the football club will be doing fuck all and sitting around because there's fuck all to do. Unless Everton are a little bit proactive and actually go out there and sort, a forward, and by people I mean the recruitment team. I mean Kevin Thelwell, and I'm sure, I'm not saying Kevin Thelwell will be sat on his arse doing nothing, but this is the time now for him to go out there and sort a striker, a number 9, a like-for-like replacement to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because it's clear that type of forward is what Frank Lampard wants. If Frank Lampard is going to be backed and kept on as manager, it's now time for Kevin Thelwell and the recruitment team to go and sort after 2 wingers that aren't just going to run the ball into the corner, try 15 step overs and then lose it. I mean, I seen a stat the other day, which was that Damari Gray averages 1 assist every 12 games. That's 3 assists a season. That's not good enough. That just simply isn't good enough. And, it's not like he's on his own. Dwight McNeil isn't offering much at the moment. Anthony Gordon isn't offering much. So, as I say, dare I say, Everton may be a little bit proactive. Maybe we will have somebody in by that Brighton game on the 3rd of January. But let's be honest, more realistically, it's going to be mid-January before we see any real transfer movement. That's 3 games of football. 3 games of football that, whether it's Frank Lampard, or whether it's Sean Dyche, or whether it's Thomas Tuchel, or whether it's me, Nan, they're going to have to deal with Everton's forward line, which at the moment is Neil Maupay, Dwight McNeil, Anthony Gordon, Damari Gray, who simply aren't good enough. Now, I know some people will say, well, Cam, the manager said that Dom would be back by Boxing Day, and Dom might be back by Boxing Day, as I've just said before, and as I said last week in the video, I'm now not counting anything on Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I'm not willing to sit here and go, but we'll have Dom back for Boxing Day, because A, we don't know whether we will, and B, how many times have we had that conversation before with ourselves? Pardon me. Sorry, throat's a little bit sickly. But my other worry then is that another 3 Premier League games that if Everton are to lose, or to not win, should I say, is another 3 off the tally come the end of the season. And another 3 off the tally of potential games to pick up points in. You know, every game now, it's not a case of, well, if we lose that, it doesn't really matter because, you know, we'll have a striker by this next week and then we'll go and win that one. Every single time Everton don't win a game of football now, I'm just filled with anxiety and worry and dread because, you know, every single game is one closer to the end of the season and one closer to another, you know, end to the season. Like the one that we had last time, which was just, you know, I don't know if I can go through that, if I'm being honest with you. I really, really don't. So, I suppose the point I'm trying to make, just to touch on the managerial situation at the moment, and we'll do, listen, just because we haven't got a game now for 6 weeks doesn't mean that the content is going to slow down. In fact, it'll probably speed up. We're going to do loads of little videos and live streams regarding various different things. But the reality is firstly, Everton don't play for 6 weeks now. So, okay, you could say, well, a new manager coming in, you know, we could get to know the squad and he could get to know the players and blah-de-blah-de-blah, and he could get to know the club before, you know, we come back for the Premier League. The reality is there's not going to be an instant fix. And, you know, as I said, certain players in this team, I agree that we can get more out of. Onana, I think we could 100% get more out of. Adisagana Gay, I think playing, you know, taking away some of the responsibility he's got, I think we'd 100% get more out of him. Iwobi, same. James Garner, same. I honestly don't think you're going to get much more out of Mopey or Damari Gray or Dwight McNeil. I just don't think you're going to get more out of them. I really, really don't. And that means we're so heavily reliant on the January transfer window, regardless of who's in charge and who isn't in charge. And maybe it won't be Frank Lampard, because maybe Everton will lose the next couple of games, you know, after the break, and Frank will be sacked. Maybe it will be. Maybe we'll come back. Massive game against Wolves. They're struggling at the moment as well. New manager, by the way. And we'll win that one, and you know, we'll look a little bit more positively. The reality is, as I said, every game that goes by without a win is one that you chalk off and you start to think, that's another game closer to, you know, the arse end of the season when, you know, we could be fighting for our lives again. And if I'm being honest with you, I was thinking about this in the car on the way home from work before, quite deeply, really. I don't think if Everton were in the same situation as they were last season, I'm not so sure it'd be the same outcome. I've seen a lot of people saying, Frank's got us out of relegation once, he could do it again. I don't necessarily think that would be the case, if I'm being honest with you. And I'm not saying that Evertonians wouldn't turn up in their thousands and support the team and react in a similar way, but I think if it was to happen again this season, there would be a lot of Evertonians that wouldn't, I don't think, be able to overlook the frustration, and rightly so, the anger, the frustration, and the you know, the fury of it all. Because at the end of the day, as I said in the instant match reaction, 4 or 5 people should have lost their jobs at this football club at the end of last season, and they didn't. They got away with it because we had a moment of, you know, excitement, and not excitement, that's not the right word. We had a moment of relief, and we had a moment of euphoria, and in that, those people, those, you know, clowns at the top of the football club who were running this club into the ground, hid under that, you know, smoke screen of euphoria, you know, rode the wave and got away with it, and then we all sort of went, right, new season, fresh start, let's go again. Reality is, there's a number of people at this football club that shouldn't be in a job. I've named them before, I don't need to name them again. You know who they are. And they got away with it last season because of that Palace game, and solely that Palace game. Frank Lampard, you know, in a big way, helped them get away with that. I don't think that would be the case this season. I just don't. I think there would be more frustration. I think there would be more anger. I think there would be more fury. And I just don't think it would be the same as what last season was. And also, a big component of that is last season we were in a relegation battle with a lad up front who, every single time he put on a blue shirt, played his heart out, gave 110%, and scored in massive games, Chelsea, Palace, to go towards our survival. We haven't got him anymore. We sold him and replaced him with, 2 players that don't score goals. And I'm not saying McNeil and Mopey don't work hard, but let's be honest, that commitment compared to what Richarlison gave was I think it's incompatible, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I fear that, we simply can't sit here as a fan base and say, well, if we get in that position again, then Frank got us out of it last time and we'll be all right. I don't think we will. And if we get in that position again, by the way, rightly so, there should be frustration and there should be fume, because, again, the same people that got us there last season are still in their jobs. And I'm not talking about the manager and I'm not talking about the players, although the players do have to take responsibility, because Saturday afternoon was abysmal. That's exactly what I'm saying. With every game that goes by, you look and you think, that's another one we could have won. That's another one we could have got points in. That's another one we should have, taken something out of. And Saturday was a prime example of that. And I mean absolutely no disrespect to Bournemouth whatsoever, but to lose twice in a week against Bournemouth and to concede 7 goals to a team that don't notoriously score a lot of goals is extremely, extremely worrying. And again, the goals we're conceding are through our own mistakes. I said this on Saturday in the instant match reaction. The first goal is a howler by the goalkeeper. I thought Jordan Pickford was shocking all game, to be fair. I think he could have done better for the third goal as well. But the first goal was an absolute howler by a goalkeeper that 99 times out of 100 you'd say would deal with that situation with no problem, and it wouldn't be a goal. The second goal should have been disallowed. It's as simple as that. And the third again was for me a goalkeeping error and a set piece conceded. But it wasn't just like Bournemouth had 2 chances to score or 3 chances to score and one should have been disallowed and it was a tight game. Firstly, Everton didn't have any real chance on goal. Everton didn't have any real opportunity. We had 1 or 2 shots on target, and by shots on target I mean I could have saved them. And other than that, we didn't threaten. But Bournemouth had a couple of shots that went wide of the post. I think they might have hit the bar on one occasion. They had a couple of chances that on another day it could have been 4 or 5. And that was our first team. That wasn't the 11 changes that Frank Lampard had made in the cup the week prior. It was atrocious. It's as simple as that. There's absolutely no way to gloss it up. And Frank Lampard done quite a telling interview on Tuesday night after the cup defeat. And within that interview, he said something along the lines of, I guess now some of these players know the reason as to why they're not playing. I guess they've had their question answered as to why they're not playing. Well, I suppose the same question should be asked about the starting 11 that started against Bournemouth. Just on the team news, a little bit shocked to not see James Garner in there. Obviously, once it became clear that he'd clearly picked up some sort of knock. I still don't know whether it's being confirmed. I can't remember seeing anything from the club or from Frank Lampard himself. But I'm assuming he's picked up some form of knock which has kept him out, or some form of illness which has kept him out of that game. Because he wasn't even on the bench. It's not like he was on the bench and it was a tactical decision. He wasn't even on the bench. So I'm sure that has been some form of injury or something that couldn't have been managed, which is fine. The manager then reverted to the typical midfield three of Garner, Onana and Iwobi, which didn't work because you had Garner isolated with too much to do. You had Iwobi and Onana just sort of playing up the field, but with no real substance or any urgency or any real shape, it looked like. Now, the manager would say, okay, the manager would say there was substance, and the manager would say there was a plan, and the manager would say, all of this and all of that. But the reality is there's a couple of clips that are going around social media. I know Matt on Twitter, tactically Matt's absolutely boss lad, put a video up yesterday, I think it was, of how easy it was for Bournemouth to bypass our midfield. And it's literally 3 passes, and they are quite possibly the slowest passes you will ever see in football. In fact, it looks like they're playing walking football. It's not like it's Man City where they're going, bish, bash, bosh, and all of a sudden, within an instant, they're on the attack. It was literally a pass. Bournemouth player would stand, he'd look round, another pass, looks down, he'd stand, another pass, and Everton players weren't getting anywhere near him. Onana wasn't getting anywhere near him. Garner, Iwobi weren't getting anywhere near them. And that's a worry, because that's when you start getting into the territory of questioning commitment and desire, and that's something that we haven't done very often with this Everton team. Specifically, I'm talking about this team this season, because there has been a number of games, even the games that we haven't won, some of the games that we do early on in the season, there has been a number of a number of situations where you haven't been able to question the desire, because there's been fight and there's been passion and there's been energy. Okay, we mightn't have got the result we wanted, but all of that has been there. It was not there on Saturday. Whether that was because the players didn't know what they were doing or didn't understand the manager's instructions, whether that was because they couldn't be asked, whether that was because they were in holiday mode of, we're all going to Australia next week and I can't wait to sit on a business class flight with my feet up and then go and explore another country and get paid to do that. Whether some of them players were thinking, I'm going to a World Cup next week, I'm dead excited. Namely Jordan Pickford, who had his worst game in an Everton shirt in a while. Onana, who didn't really do anything and obviously is gone to the World Cup today. I don't know. But it was a real it was an end of season performance for me. An end of season performance mid-season. But it's not it's not mid-season, is it? Because there's been a break. So that makes sense. But that shouldn't have been the case, because the reality is we all know, listen, whether Everton end up in a relegation battle this season, or whether Everton survive comfortably, or whether Everton go down, none of us, not one of us, there's 83 people watching the chat. I don't think there's anybody in the chat, myself included, that can truly sit there and say they are with 100% confidence that Everton won't be in any form of battle this season, relegation battle. That Everton will be comfortable and Everton will be okay. Because it's impossible to sit there and say that, because we don't score goals. And whilst we improved our defence massively in the summer, and I agree with, and whilst I think we have improved our midfield, although it's not been great recently, I think we have improved our midfield from what we had in terms of athleticism and quality and youth in there. The reality is that goals win games of football, and it's such a Michael Owen thing to say. Oh, well, you're not going to win a game of football if you don't score goals, but it's the truth, and I feel like it's something that is being overlooked at the moment by Frank Lampard, and maybe it's only being overlooked publicly because he doesn't want to come out and say, yeah, listen, we haven't got enough goals in the team, because then the question will be asked, well, hang on, you spent 35 million in the summer on Mopay and McNeil, so why have you not got enough goals in the team if they're the signings you made? Maybe Frank Lampard doesn't want to get onto that, but I don't think even Frank Lampard could sit there and say goals aren't a problem. I think if you were to ask him what the biggest problem with Everton at the moment is, he'd say we don't score enough goals, and we don't. The reality is, it's not even a case of we're creating a lot of chances, we just haven't got nobody to finish it. That would be easy then. Just go out and buy a goal scorer in the summer. There's plenty of them. Plenty of forwards that, haven't necessarily got a lot of pace or haven't necessarily got a lot of creativity, but they'll put the ball in the back of the net. Plenty of them. That if you give them chances, they'll score. That isn't Everton's only problem. Erling Haaland could play for Everton, and he wouldn't have the goals he's got at City this season. And the reason for that, obviously he would improve us, of course he would improve us, but you need people to create chances. You need people to create opportunities. You need the wingers to actually be getting 8, 9, 10, 12 assists a season, not 1 or 2 or 3. So this is what makes it even harder for Everton. If we were just missing a goal scorer and you're sitting here saying, well, Gordon and Gray are putting in 12 great balls a game in and there's just nobody there to score them, then easy go out in January, buy a goal scorer. We could go out in January and buy a goal scorer and it still wouldn't make a difference, because we'd need another winger to go with that goal scorer to create. I personally think we need 2 wingers and a goal scorer, and that was evident again, playing a team that were below us in the table before the game had started, and as I said, hadn't picked up a point since mid-October before this game, and we couldn't fathom any real opportunity against them. We really couldn't, and that for me is the most worrying, is we don't look like scoring in games. Other than that Palace game, which as I said, we had a complete change of formation and a complete change of system, which the manager then changed, weirdly. Other than that Palace game, we haven't really looked like scoring. And that, for me, is the biggest worry at the football club at the moment. The biggest worry at the football club. We've got no creativity in this team. Absolutely no creativity. I mean, if I was to... Let me put the question to you now. 87 people watching live. Big thank you all, by the way, for the support. If you are enjoying, please leave a like. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Let me ask you all now. Take away Alex Iwobi, who's had a great season and, been wonderful this season. Who is Everton's most creative player? Tell me now. Because 24 months ago, we had James Rodriguez, Luca Dean, Gylfi Sigurdsson. Even the wingers were capable of creating opportunities. Richarlison. Take away Alex Iwobi now. Genuinely, who is Everton's most creative player? I really want to know in the comments. Because I can't answer that. And don't just say, well, whoever's got the second most assists, because it'll be Gordon or Gray or somebody like that. They're not. I honestly can't answer it. I mean, Stephen says Patterson. Snarvy says probably Patterson. Has Patterson got an assist this season? Not that I'm just going off of assists, but let me have a look at Pats. I know I'm not just going off assists, by the way. Before you say, well, you said you weren't going off assists, but just to prove a point. Where are we? Player comparison. How does Nathan Broadhead come up before Nathan Patterson? No assists this season in 10 games, no goals. And I know I'm not just going off assists, but my point is that creativity is then coming from, Pat's getting into good areas and maybe playing a couple of good passes it's still not enough. Blue says Damari Gray, it's inarguable. Damari Gray will get an assist every 12 games, as statistically proven. He'll score a goal every 3 months. Liam says, you got me. James says, the toffee lady. Wonderlust says, Patterson. Stephen says, he's the only one that plays with purpose. Groundsman says, Philip. Liam says, you got me. And this is the problem, isn't it? Is that you take away Alex Iwobi, who, by the way, has been exceptional this season, but 12 months ago wasn't exceptional. So even Alex Iwobi has been... It's not like we're sitting here saying, well, we've got Alex Iwobi and he's been great for years. He hasn't. He surprised us all. You take away him and all of a sudden you're looking at, well, it's Damari Gray. And the Blues says, factually creating more than anyone. He isn't a good creator, but he's still... That's fair. That's fine. Factually, yeah, that's fine. But that's my point. Is our second most creative player in the team. I don't think there's really anybody that could sit here and say Damari Gray is good enough. Or is good enough to be able to sit here and go, yeah, we'll be all right, we've got Damari Gray. If you were to say to me, now, can Everton go out and buy a striker in January, 6'4", centre forward, are you confident that Damari Gray's output will allow that goal scorer, that's striker, to score enough goals? I'm not saying no. And the Blue says assist depends on someone scoring, and Damari Gray's created 20 chances this season. I'm not sure where those 20 chances have been created because I can't remember. And you'd have to look at what chances and how, what determines the chance, etc. But I wouldn't be confident. Personally, I wouldn't be confident because I've watched Damari Gray numerous times this season have games where he's absolutely irrelevant in them. Absolutely irrelevant. So that's my point. There's no creativity in this team whatsoever. And there was very little creativity in this team last season. But what we had last season... In fact, I'll tell you who probably our second most creative player is. He hasn't played for about 6 months and he might never play for Everton again. It's Andros Townsend. But the difference between this season and last season... That's why when I'm sitting here and people are saying, oh, we'll be alright if we get into a relegation battle because we survived last season and Lampard done it last season. We cannot, and I don't mean to keep bringing this up because I know he's not an Everton player and I know we've got to move on and I know this, that and the other. We cannot underestimate how important Richarlison was for Everton last season and has been for Everton for a number of years. We're talking about a kid that not only would wear his heart on his sleeve and give everything every week, therefore lifting the crowd and lifting the players around him, but also somebody that was capable of creating chances for himself, capable of scoring goals, capable of out of nowhere, getting your team back into a game with a goal like he did against Palace, like he did against Chelsea. we haven't got that now. And we haven't got anybody that is anywhere near like that. Without Richarlison last season, Everton are playing championship football now. We are sitting here talking about Everton taking on Swansea in the championship, and we're all absolutely gutted and fuming that Everton have been relegated. And that is fact. That is absolute fact of the matter. And I'm not saying it was only Richarlison, and I'm not sitting here saying we should all just moan and cry because we haven't got Richarlison. But what I'm saying is, I honestly think it's negligent how the importance of Richarlison was sort of ignored in a way. And people can sit there all they like and say, well, it wasn't ignored because the manager said how important he was and the board knew how important he was. But it was ignored because we didn't properly replace him. We half-assed replaced him. We replaced him with two players, one who hadn't scored a Premier League goal in 18 games before he joined Everton or whatever it was, and one who'd scored one Premier League goal last season and hasn't got a lot of pace and doesn't really create chances for himself. And I don't mind Dwight McNeil or Neil Mowbray, and I'm not by any sense of the imagination sitting here saying they're the problem and, you know, we should go with them because it's all their fault. But what I'm saying is it's just so disappointing and upsetting and frustrating that we went through all we went through last season. We all sat here time and time again and talked about how the club have failed over the last 4 or 5 years, how the management have failed, how the recruitment team have failed, how the how the board have failed, etc., etc. We all sat here and drilled in. I had conversations, hour upon hour upon hour upon hour of conversations about how this club have failed in the past. And we failed. We absolutely failed to look at that lad and think, do you know what? He's probably going to leave this summer, because we all knew nobody. I don't care what anybody says, whether you're an Everton fan or whether you're the manager, Frank Lampard, whether you're a teammate of his or whether you're somebody on the board. Nobody at any point had any thought or belief that Richarlison was going to stay at Everton. We all knew he would leave Everton because there'd been conversations about it for 2-3 years prior, and he deserves to be going and playing European football at the top of his game. Young lad, you know, a lot of career ahead of him. We all knew he was leaving the football club. Everybody at Everton knew he was leaving the football club. So how? I honestly do not understand how they have not looked and gone, do you know what? We're going to lose this lad. And this lad was a big reason we stayed up. His goals, his creativity, his ability to drag a team through a game and win a game. He wasn't perfect, but he did something that we couldn't have afforded to lose. And we lost it and replaced it with players that we're never going to bring that. We're never going to bring that. You know, Mowbray will bring the fight and the grit and the attitude of Richarlison, but he won't bring the ability to create chances on his own. Neither will Dwight McNeil. Again, we talk about failures at the top of the football club. We talk about failures to address key issues. How Everton allowed Richarlison to walk out the door and not bring in a serious replacement for him is beyond my comprehension. It really is beyond my comprehension because, again, I don't care, to be honest. I don't care if he's left Everton Football Club. I don't care if he's not an Everton player anymore. I don't care if you say, get over him, Cam. Stop cry-arsing about him. He's gone to Tottenham. In all honesty, I don't really give a fuck. That lad was a massive part of the reasons to why Everton survived in the Premier League last season. He isn't here now. We all knew he wasn't going to be here, and yet we still failed to replace him. So, how can I be confident with us going into January and replacing him when it's a much harder task than replacing him in a summer transfer window? And this goes back to, and I don't want to get into, too much conversation about the way the club's ran, because we've got 6 weeks to sit here and have these conversations, and best believe we will, by the way. So if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, because the next 6 weeks are going to be filled with constant content about the team, what we need, the ball, what needs to change, etc. All of it coming up over the next 6 weeks. So please do hit that subscribe button if you are new. We are trying to grow the channel as much as possible. I want to hit 10,000 subscribers at some point in the future, so if you could hit that subscribe button, it would be great. But you know, we spoke so often, and I've spoke so often on this channel. For anybody that's been around since I've done the channel for 4 years now, and I remember when Carlo Ancelotti left, and the reports started to come out that there was some form of clause in Carlo Ancelotti's contract that said that if a certain team, Real Madrid, come in for him, he could leave. And I remember sitting here saying, if that clause was in his contract, fine, because Everton at the time were probably thinking, he's just been sacked by Napoli, he's coming to Everton. If Real Madrid are to come in for him, then that's going to tell us that he's done a fucking brilliant job here. We've probably won something. We're in Europe. Great, fine. I get that. You know, that I'm not disputing that clause being in the contract, and I'm not particularly asked about that clause being in the contract. What my point is that the second, and I mean the second, that clause was put into that contract and Carlo Ancelotti signed on that dotted paper, Everton should have had a list of at least five potential replacements for Carlo Ancelotti at any one time. And by that, what I mean is that would have been a change in list, but it should have been up in the owner's office or the CEO's office, and it should have been potential managers to replace Ancelotti, just in case that clause is triggered. You know, a plan B, a bit of proactiveness. Well, okay, we don't necessarily think the clause will be triggered, but because it's there, we've got a plan for if it is triggered. We've got to be proactive. We've got to have a contingency. So we're going to create a list of managers, and this list will change naturally because time will change. So this list will change, but we're going to constantly have a list of 5 managers based on priority that could take over from Ancelotti if he leaves. We didn't. We just went, that clause will never be triggered. Don't be fucking stupid. It was triggered. And after 2 months, we ended up with Rafael Benitez, who was an absolute failure at every level at the football club, and was a massive reason as to why we were in such a horrible situation last season. And the reason we ended up with Rafael Benitez is because everybody sat there and went, fucking hell, we didn't expect Carlo to leave. That's fine. If Real Madrid just come in for him and he agreed this deal, that's absolutely fine. You know, it was a surprise to everybody. But from what we've been led to believe is that there was actually a clause in there to say that he could leave. And if you're wondering why are you going on about Carlo Ancelotti, Cam, when Everton have been beaten 3-0 by Bournemouth, my point is the same should have happened with Richarlison. Everton, throughout the entirety of last season, should have been thinking, we know this lad is going to leave in the summer. Very likely, unless we win the league, unless we win like an FA Cup, or unless we're guaranteed Europe, this lad is probably going to leave in the summer. So let's create a list of players. Let's scout a list of players that we could bring in to replace him for when he does leave. Instead, we went, nah, fuck it, we'll leave it. We get to the summer, he leaves, and we go, shit, what do we do now? We rush our decision and we replace him with players that are never going to be able to bring what he can bring. And it's these constant bad decisions, this lack of contingency, this lack of plan B, this lack of proactiveness that gets Everton into these situations. And I'm not saying things haven't improved, because they have improved under Kevin Thelwell, and maybe that wasn't Kevin Thelwell's job because, you know, the Richarlison situation happened before Kevin Thelwell was employed, and maybe that will change now. The reality is it's still an issue. And now we're at a point where we're conceding 7 goals in a week to Bournemouth and not creating any real chances against them. The 1 goal we scored against them was a worldie by Damari Gray, which he won't score again for another 6 months at least. And this is Bournemouth, by the way, who are one of the, again, no disrespect to Bournemouth or their fans, but one of the worst teams in the league. One of the teams that you would have fancied, or you should be fancy Everton to beat. Anyway, we are going to get in the live comments. If you are enjoying, please do leave a comment live. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe. We will actually talk about the game in a minute. I want to talk about the goals conceded. I want to talk a little bit about the shape and the formation, because the reason why it's changed since the Palace game is beyond me. Pokey says, boss, to see how this channel has grown, by the way. Thank you very much, Pokey. Really appreciate it. Let's go to the top. Connor says, hi Cam, you okay? I'm not bad, mate. I'm not bad. Tom says, Frank just isn't good enough, Cam. The underlying numbers show he's not a good coach. Interesting. Philip says, I just woke up. It was all a bad dream. It wasn't a bad dream. It was very, very, very much reality. Very much reality. Jason says, hi Cam, what's happening? Stephen says, it's horrible. I'm worried too, my mate. Outdoors says, we will honestly get a new striker in January. Will we honestly get a new striker in January? Sorry, I can't see it. I can't see how we can escape relegation this season, especially when I see the likes of Brentford beating City. Well, we are looking at Bournemouth. We're looking at probably Wolves at the moment. Yeah, I'm being honest, I don't even know who's around us. You look at the Premier League table, and obviously, we're only early on in the season, and a lot of things can change. And we're in the World Cup break now, and I'm sure a lot of things will change during that World Cup break, with players getting injured or not coming back in the same form as what they left. But around us at the moment are Wolves, Southampton, Forest, West Ham, Leeds, Bournemouth. One win takes us above all of them teams into joint 13th with Leicester. 2 wins takes us, right up there into 8th position. So it is very, very tight, and obviously there's no need for any real, at the moment, it's not like we're in May and we're having these conversations, but the reality is that if we don't have these conversations now, nothing will change, and we'll do exactly what we did last season, where I remember sitting here distinctly in November and saying, I'm a little bit worried now, and people saying, don't be stupid, Cam, we've only played 14 games, we'll be alright. And then it was, don't be stupid, Cam, we've only played 20 games, we'll be alright. And then it was, don't be stupid, Cam, we've only played 25 games. Then it was, we've only played 30 games, and then all of a sudden it was, shit, we are in a bad situation here. We've got to be proactive on jumping on these things before it gets to what it got to last season. And we can't be proactive until January, because we can't sign players until January, and that means we're not going to score many goals until then either. But that's the issue. Liam says, Lampard is useless, he can't set up a team, can't make a sub, and his tactics are dreadful, time to go. And Ananda says, the biggest worry I have is that if the club choose to keep Frank, you must give him time after the break. We cannot give him all of this time and then sack him 1 or 2 matches after the week. And that's the point. How much time do you then give him? And then are you in a situation where you're doing what we did last season, where you're sacking a manager in mid-January, you're bringing another one in who's then got to bring in players in 10 days, and then, get the team out of a bad rut, which barely worked last season. Barely worked last season. I don't know. Honestly, my head's just battered with it at the moment. My head is just absolutely battered with all things Everton. It's just, it's mad. Wayne says, hi Cam from Hull, what's happening, Wayne? Eugene says, do you think it's time for change now and get a new manager? As I said before, mate, a new manager to come in, we might get a boost. We might beat Wolves on Boxing Day. They've got a new manager as well, don't forget. Julian Lopetegui will be managing them for the first time on Boxing Day. City is probably a write-off, even if we had fucking Gandalf as manager. City's probably going to be a write-off. Brighton, okay, we might, but there's no guarantees. Anyway, let's have a little discussion about the game then, because that's what we're here for. It's a game review. We talk about the game. We don't really want to talk about the game, but we have to talk about the game because that's what we're here for. Everton lost again. Another lacklustre performance. Another lacklustre 90 minutes of football by everybody, really. I think barring the 2 centre-halves again, and Mikalenko, who I thought was alright, I think everybody was off the pace. I'll give Patterson, I'll give him a pass because he's only just coming back from injury. The midfield were atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. Offered very little. Again, the 4-3-3 just isn't working at the moment because it's not a 4-3-3. It's not a typical 4-3-3 where you've got 4 defenders and then you've got 3 midfielders across the line there and then 3 forwards. It's a 4. And I was watching Toffee TV's final word to the game earlier on today, and I think Mike Cosgrove was on there, and he mentioned it's a 4, and then it's not a 3 flat midfield, it's a 1-1-1. So it's a Garner left in too much space on his own with too much responsibility, and then Onana and Iwobi push forward, who was sort of just jogging around as if to say, I don't really know what I'm meant to be doing here. And again, as I said, that's why there's videos emerging from the likes of Tactically Matt on Twitter where Bournemouth are just passing it round us far too easily. far too easily. Noah says, let me just touch on this. Noah says, Cam, thoughts on Iwobi getting flagged at the end of the game. Listen, one thing I would say is, firstly, Iwobi's probably the last player in this team that deserves to be getting any sort of flack or any sort of criticism, because he's been by far our best player this season, joint with probably Tarkowski and Cody. He's been our most consistent, and he's been the hardest worker as well. You know, it's not like somebody you could say, oh, he doesn't work. He's been the hardest worker. Secondly, it wasn't Iwobi's shirt that was thrown back at him. Iwobi gave his shirt to a fan, and then another fan threw a different shirt onto the pitch. So from an angle, it looks like Iwobi's given the shirt and then it's being thrown back, but it wasn't. It was a different shirt, and I believe the fan had tried to do it earlier on in the game as well. What the fallout was for, I don't know. Maybe Iwobi felt like it was his shirt that was thrown back, and then he was told quickly that it wasn't his shirt, and then it calmed down. I don't really know what the whole situation was. He looked visibly upset. Obviously, the Evertonians were visibly upset, and rightly so, but I don't really know what that was for. But what I would say is Iwobi is ultimately the I'd say probably the last player people should be criticising. I don't really think people were necessarily criticising Iwobi. I think it was more an overall, exertion of frustration about the whole performance rather than just Iwobi. And Wonderlust mentions about Jordan Pickford as well. Apparently Jordan Pickford come over to the fans and held his hands up and said, blame me, it was my fault, which usually I'd say, no, it's everybody's fault and it's a team game, and I still think that is the case for this one, but in all fairness, Jordan was shocking. The first goal is abysmal, and the third goal I think he should do better for as well. The second goal he's in no man's land, but it should have been a foul anyway. And Mr. Blue Sky says we play 4-2-3-1 against Palace and 1-3-0. Why didn't we stick with the formation? Exactly the point. And why we didn't, I don't know. Eugene, I think Tom Cannon will get a chance, and so he should get a chance because he done more in 30 seconds than what Mopey did. But yeah, as I said, we just started and we just seemed lackluster. We seemed slow. We didn't seem off the back quickly. Bournemouth seemed like the team with more agency. Bournemouth seemed like the team that wanted it more. They seemed like the team that were more interested in winning the game, were more interested in getting the points, were more in need of the points, which is a bit mad because both teams really needed the points at that time. And, you know, again, when you have a look at the stats, 16 shots Bournemouth had, Everton had 15, but the key one, 9 of Bournemouth's 16 shots were on target, 3 of Everton's were. So, you know, over half of Bournemouth's shots were on target, whereas a fifth of Everton's shots were on target, which is nonsense. And even then, they weren't challenging the goalkeeper, they were comfortable saves. Everton had more possession, who gives a fuck? But it was quite early on in the game, 20 minutes in, 18 minutes in, whatever it was, when the first goal coming, and I feel like we're getting back into this sort of mentality, and I don't necessarily think it's as much a mentality issue now. It used to be a mentality issue. I think now it's more of just an acknowledgement that our forwards aren't very good, of going 1-0 down and knowing the game was over. I mean, the Blues says it before I can get my words out. Cam Everton changed with that goal. We knew it was all over. This used to be the case with Everton, and it was the case for years with Everton, but I think it was different. I think back then, it was a mentality thing. We'd go 1-0 down, everybody had shit themselves, and we all sort of knew, right, that's game over, we're not winning this one. Now I think it's a bit different. I don't necessarily think it's a mentality thing now. I just think it's a case of our forward line of shite. So now we go 1-0 down, and automatically, everybody in that away end, everybody watching at home, and probably some of the players and the manager probably thought, shit, we've gone 1-0 down and we don't really create an awful lot of chances. Given the fact that there was then pressure on us to get back in the game, that makes it even worse. Because if it's 0-0 and we hit them on the counter and we get a goal, there's not that much pressure because we're still very much in the game. If we're 1-0 down, we need to go out and score then, and it puts pressure on the forwards, and that is when, for me, they're just pretty useless at that point. It's quality. We haven't got the quality. So when we go 1-0 down, you're looking and you're thinking, well, who's going to pop up with the equaliser? Is it going to be Mopey? Probably not. Is it going to be Anthony Gordon? Probably not. Is it going to be Dwight McNeil, Tamari Gray? Probably not. And that's where the big problem lies. The goal in itself, again, I don't. There's not much more to say other than it's absolutely awful by Jordan Pickford. It's absolutely awful by Jordan Pickford. He should be doing so much better with it. It's a comfortable save. It's an absolute comfortable save that he makes look ridiculously difficult. I don't know. Look, I'm not going to sit here and have a massive go at Jordan, because Jordan consistently has been very good over the last year or so, 2 years even, but he wasn't very good on Saturday. And then, as I said, the pressure was put on Everton then from that point, and we didn't really see a reaction. We didn't really see a reaction that I think any of us wanted. We didn't really see us put pressure on them. We didn't really see us get at them. We didn't really see us have any period in the game where you look and you think, we're on top here. You know, we're going to get at them. We're going to, we're going to get back into this game. We then, we continued. They get the second goal not so long after, 10 minutes after, which I actually think is incredibly lucky, because it should never have counted. I just don't understand how a goal can count when one of the opposition players is down with a head injury. It was 7 minutes later, so again, that was the real killer. As soon as it went 2-0, I think everybody sort of went, right, okay, this is game over. I mean, I was on a night out with a couple of me mates on Saturday night after the game, and they said as soon as it went 10-0, he just turned off and went and got ready, because you just know, right, we might get a goal on the counter-attack. The likelihood of us getting two in an away game, the way in which we're playing at the moment, is nigh on impossible. Again, for me, I think the second goal is a poor one to concede. In terms of defensively, Jordan Pickford is nowhere to be seen, and the fact that we allow multiple chances on goal without any real defensive capability to break it down is poor as well. But as I said, I still, listen, I'm not going to sit here and blame the referee. I had a massive go at the referee the other day, and rightly so, because he's a fucking idiot, and I think he's a disgrace to the game, and I don't think he should be anywhere near the level. It's not his fault we lost the game. Bournemouth had another 3-4 chances that they could have scored. The reality is that second goal shouldn't have stood. If the referee hasn't seen it or hasn't deemed it a foul straight away, fine, but there's not a chance. And I'll put it this way, and I'm not asked about saying this. Frank Lampard said something similar along these lines and got fined 30 grand. I'm not asked. I honestly don't care anymore. If that goal is conceded at Anfield against Liverpool, if it's conceded at the Etihad against City, if it's conceded at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea, at Old Trafford against Man United, it is chalked out. And rightly so, by the way, rightly so. And nobody has any issue whatsoever. Because there's a player down with a head injury. Once a player's down with a head injury, a game should be stopped instantly because of the rules around concussions, etc. And the goal was scored whilst the player was down. It's not like the player was injured in the act of scoring the goal, because then there'd be an argument of, well, hang on, okay, well, maybe it was just a fair challenge. The player was down injured during that play. It should have been scrapped. It's as simple as that. And the fact that it wasn't just further exposes the PGMOL and the referees and the FA as just being absolute fucking shambles. This is an organisation that's worth billions, by the way, that's ran like a fucking zoo with no fucking zookeepers. An absolute shit show. They're a disgrace. I'd love to have one meeting with the PGMOL or a referee or the FA, because I'd just tear the absolute fucking arse off them. I'd tear the absolute arse off them, because they're an absolute disgrace. Anyway, the goal was given, and at that point, as I said, 25 minutes in, Everton 2-0 down. We all know we're not going to get back into that game. The fans have started to turn a bit sour. The players' heads are clearly dropped. The confidence was on the floor. And that was when I think players started to get to the point of, get me out of this game and get me to this break, whether it be to Australia or whether it be to the World Cup. We then had the tackle on Amadou Onana, again, further exposing the FA for the absolute nonsense that they are, how it's not a sending off. I mean, the lad is 2 feet in the air, he's out of control, and for everybody saying, he wins the ball, he wins the ball, I've witnessed about 15 Everton players get sent off in the last 10 years, and I'd say 13 of them won the ball. But they were sent off because it was reckless and they weren't in control and it was dangerous. But when Virgil van Dijk does it, or when, I can't remember who it was at Bournemouth, or when, Jordan Ayew does it, or when somebody does it against Everton, that's all right. That's all right, because he won the ball. It was a sending off challenge all day long. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. He's 2 feet off the ground. He's out of control, and he could have broken Amadou Onana's leg. Put it this way, and again, I'm not asked. Come and send me a letter to say I'm wrong, or, you know, I'm not Frank Lampard, so fine me 30 grand, whatever. I don't give a fuck. I haven't got 30 grand anyway, but if that's the other way around, Amadou Onana's sent off. I don't give a fuck. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Because their team crowd the referee, the fans get on the back, and the referee shits himself because none of these referees have got a backbone between them, and he sends them off. Could that have changed the game? Maybe. Maybe had the referees made the right decisions, it would have only been 1-0. They'd have been down to 10 men, and maybe we'd have been, maybe we'd have seen a different game. I'm not going to sit here and contemplate whether or not that'd be the case because, again, Bournemouth still with a better team throughout the game, and Everton still didn't look particularly interested or like we had any chance of getting back into the game at that point. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, it was all the referee's fault. I think the referee was an absolute knobhead and had his part to play in it, but Everton weren't good enough, and it's as simple as that. And as I said, from that point on, it was just a continuation of, a lack of any real intensity, any real, Savage says, honestly starting to sound like you're blaming the ref for the defeat. No, not a good look, we were crap. I've literally just said, I'm not blaming the referee. Everton were awful, and Bournemouth had 4 or 5 other chances they could have scored. But the reality is, I'm not going to sit here and do a review of a game and ignore 2 massive refereeing decisions that, had they have gone our way, may have had a different outcome. I'm not saying they would have, but may have had a different outcome. We're talking about a goal being disallowed and a red card. I'm not talking about a corner that wasn't given that we could have scored from, or I'm not talking about a free kick on the edge of the box that we might have scored, because then, okay, that's a stretch because we don't score corners or free kicks. I'm talking about a sending off, which was a blatant sending off, and a goal being disallowed that should never have stood. As I said, at 2-0 at that point, the crowd's starting to get on the back, the players' heads have dropped, the confidence is gone, the manager makes the substitutions far too late, and even the players that come on had no real impact other than Tom Cannon, who I thought done well, and obviously it was great to see him get his Premier League debut. And then with 10 minutes to go, on the counter-attack, because Everton are, let's say, pushing for a goal. That would be an over-exaggeration. Everton are walking around with the ball. They get on the counter-attack, they get a corner, ball comes in, header. Jordan Pickford is beaten from close distance. Should he have done better? Probably. I haven't seen the replay, because guess what? I'm not going back and watching this game. And that's it. 3-0. Game over. Obviously, we saw the reaction of the crowd after the game. Should it have been like that? No. And I understand people on Twitter and social media sitting here saying, well, that's a disgrace. Listen, I'm not advocating any sort of abuse or any sort of vile language or action towards anybody, footballer or not. The reality is, a lot of those fans have travelled 8 hours on a coach, most of them 7-8 hours on a coach, twice within the space of a week, to watch us concede 7 goals to a team that, without being disrespectful, are fucking shite. So you're going to get frustration, you're going to get anger, you're going to get fans not being happy. You're not going to get fans going, well done for your effort there, when there was a distinct lack of effort. And the fans had just spent hundreds of pounds doing that twice in a week. Whether it's right or wrong, again, I don't agree with it, and there's no substance to what I'm saying, because it's not like I'm defending a fan who said something, because there's no real sort of, he said this or they said that, or they be chanting this or they be chanting that. There was none of that. It was just visible frustration, which I can say I visibly understand that frustration because of what those fans will have been through. And had I have been stood in that stadium, I would have been visibly frustrated as well, because I was sat here fucking fuming doing the instant match reaction, and I'm sat in my own bedroom. So Everton lose another game. The manager has to be responsible. Why he decided to change from the 4-2-3-1 and revert back to a formation that isn't working is beyond me. But as I said, Everton's big issue now is going out in January and bringing in some quality, bringing in a striker and bringing in 2 wingers for me that can create for said striker. Because at the moment we're just not scoring goals, and therefore we're not going to win games of football. We're shite as well, though, says the Blues. Yeah, we are. Cannon for regular first team between now and January. I'd like to see him a bit more. He looked like he could hold his own as well. It wasn't like he was just running around like a headless chicken. He looked like physically he could hold his own. We never beat the teams that come up from the Championship, says Ryan. We don't really beat anybody, to be honest. Would you have threw a Wobies? No, I wouldn't have. That's what I'm saying. But again, this is misinterpreted. A Wobie shirt wasn't thrown back. It was a different shirt that was thrown onto the pitch. A Wobie shirt was given to one of his family, I think, and a different shirt was thrown onto the pitch. It just looks like it was a Wobie shirt. Would I have thrown a different shirt? No. I'm not advocating that. I'm not advocating people abusing players or whatever, but I can't sit here and say if I'd have been in the Vitality Stadium on Saturday after watching that, after travelling all the way up down the country, knowing I wasn't going to get home till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, after doing it, you know, the Tuesday before and not getting home till 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, I can't sit here and say I'd have been saying, oh yeah, do you know what, I'm all right with that, I'm not too hard, it's only football. I'd have been frustrated as well. James says, what about players holding their face and head when going down? It didn't touch their head. Everton players at it all the time. Again, a different argument for a different day. The Tarkowski one, he was hitting the head. Mikalenko was also hitting the head and obviously had to go off. I fucking forgot. I forgot. In all of this game, 3 goals conceded, refereeing decisions. I forgot that Seamus Coleman played left back for Everton for 60 minutes in 2022 at 36 years old. Wow. Mr. Blue Sky says Guy can't sit in the front the front of the back four on his own. Players like Makaleli and Vieira needs another midfield to sit there with him. I agree. And Live Vid says 35 million on Mopé McNeil. Surely Diaz or Saha for the same amount as an individual player would have been a better decision. Well, they were 2 bad decisions. I mean, Wonderlust says, can't object to fans making their general disapproval known. Abuse is inexcusable, and getting super personal about it isn't great either. I agree with that, to be honest. You know, and again, before anybody tries to spin the words or whatever, obviously I'm not advocating abuse, and I'm not advocating, you know, personal. I'm not advocating any, you know, I wasn't there, so I don't know what was said or what was felt. All the videos you hear is, it's not anything being said. It's just a loud noise of fume, you know, and not anything specific, just a loud grunt of fume, and as I said, I can understand that. Do you think Tom Cannon can start as Alex? No. Maybe at some point, but we can't sit here now and go, well, we've got Tom Cannon, so we'll be sound. We need a striker in January. It's as simple as that. Anyway, we are going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave a like. A defeat before the break. Well, at least, at least there's a break. And at least we can now not have to watch Everton for 6 weeks. If you're going to watch the World Cup, great. I'm just going to fucking binge Marvel films, to be honest with you. And, yeah, forget about Everton for a bit. I say that, but we'll be back with another live stream over the next couple of days. And we'll be back with 4 or 5 videos a week, every single week during the World Cup. So I'm not really going to forget about Everton because I'm coming on here to talk about them. Anyway, we are going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button. As I said, loads of content coming up over the World Cup break. Finally, we don't have to actually talk about games. We can just talk about things we want to talk about, or things we don't want to talk about, but we've got to. If you have enjoyed this one, please hit that like button. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe as well. It would mean a massive amount to me. And yeah, if you're watching this YouTube video, please leave your thoughts down below. But big thanks to everybody for watching the live comments. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, thankfully, we don't have to watch Everton for 6 weeks now. Well, I mean, we'll watch the pre-season games in Australia, won't we? But let's be honest. Yeah, I say we won't be asked, but we will be asked. Probably still be fuming at them. Anyway, big thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And we'll see you later.